All right, good afternoon. I know we talked about the game last Saturday night or Friday night, and I'm sure we'll have some questions about it. But a little bit about this team we're playing, Abilene Christian, new head coach Adam Durrell, who's very impressive. I believe his record's 76-8 at Northwest Missouri State, three Division II national championships. Done an outstanding job. They played New Mexico in the first game. It was 14-7 at half. I believe they had a couple turnovers offensively. I know one of them was a 95-yard interception return, but they played New Mexico very well. Look athletic. They're a spread offensive football team that likes to throw the ball around a lot. He's had a lot of success with that. Defensively, they're athletic guys. I think they've got 8 guys on their two deep on the defense that are transfers from Power 5 schools, TCU, Cal, Washington State, Texas, Arkansas, Fresno, UTSA, a lot of transfers, a lot of athletic guys. Off our defense, we'll be able to watch them against New Mexico and get an idea of what they do. Offensively, for us, it's going to be a little bit difficult because they were playing the option in New Mexico and kind of played an 8-man front deal for New Mexico. Their defensive coordinator is from Sioux Falls, so we'll be looking at a little Sioux Falls film, a little bit of what they did against New Mexico, and a little bit of what Adam, even though he's an offensive coach, what they did at Northwest Missouri State. Next game, it's Ag Day. It's a big event for our university. It's a home game. We're excited about it and looking forward to moving on from last week to this week. Questions?
Mike, obviously in your press conference, you set a tone for the team that no excuses. Did you sense that your players were taking that tact long before we'd talked to them, long before you'd gotten in the locker room?
No, we were really trying to say it throughout the game, because emotions run high during the game, and when things don't work, or sometimes we like to vent, or things happen, and you're always talking about your players about play the next play. And same thing in that game. We kept saying, let's just play the next play. Let's line up and keep playing. We're going to have a chance to be in this ball game. Yes, it's unfortunate that it happened. Yes, we hate it got called back, but what are we going to do about it? We're still down 14 points. We need to figure out a way to try to get some points on the scoreboard, and unfortunately, we were unable to do that.
From a coaching standpoint, though, is that one of the harder ones you've ever been through as far as trying to keep your team, because there were just so many of those calls that seemed to go against you, to keep your team in that right frame of mind?
Well, you just try to do what you preach all the time. Trying to stay in the moment and play the next play. Whether it's good or bad. A lot of times you're coaching from that perspective off something you did good as a player, or you didn't do well as a player, and trying to regroup. You were trying to coach against an outside force there, something you didn't have control over, and that's what my message was. Look, we don't have control over that. Let's just keep trying to play ball. We still got a chance. I feel like we're, in the game. I really felt like, from the first quarter on, we were controlling, what we wanted to do. We just weren't able to get any points on the board, and we were getting stops defensively. But, you have 10 penalties and 3 turnovers. It's going to be hard to beat a good football team.
Well, upon further weekend review, what did you think of the calls, and is there anything you can do?
Again, I'm not, like I said after the game, they made the calls. We moved on. As a coach, you put things on tape that you have questions about, and usually that's around 5 to 10 calls. Offense, defense, special teams. There was 25 calls we sent in.
Mike, your players did have some reaction to the calls as they were made, but they weren't overreaction. Do you like the way your team mentally, maturely handled the situations as they unfolded?
Yeah, I did. I thought, it's frustrating. When it was very, good defense, tight coverage, good players on that side of the ball, making it hard for us to get any momentum. And when you have some momentum plays and they get called back, the first thing to do is to, go the other direction. And I didn't think our guys did. We lined up and kept playing, and that's what you want them to do. And that's what I'm looking for them to do this week. I mean, is to, that game's over. We're 1-1. Our goal is to try to find out a way to go 2-1. The biggest challenge we got is this game this week against really an unknown opponent with a new head coach, and new coordinators, and not a lot of film. And if we're focusing on what happened at Colorado or focusing on other things, we need to focus on ourselves and get ready to play.
Is that somewhat easier when you don't have the amount of film? To focus on yourselves just because you don't have as much maybe?
Yeah, that's a good point, Kelly. It's going to be, you're not going to show a lot of, you hate it as a coach sometimes when you're having to show different teams, because you want to look at the scheme, but at the same time, you got to make sure you got the right matchups personnel-wise. So a lot of this week will be, focusing on what we do and I know offensively it'll be our base rules. What's our base rules on this run? What's our base rules on this protection? So if we get something different, it doesn't, you're not really game planning for Abilene Christian. You're running, what you do the best. All right, this is what we do the best. We know how to handle all adjustments in these scenarios in the run and pass game, setting the run in the right mic, and the pass game, understanding 2 high, 1 high, zone, man, all those things. So we'll focus on us and probably show a lot of our tape versus scout team opposed to watching Abilene Christian film because they play New Mexico, which is totally different than us.
Mike, you mentioned the 25 calls that you submitted for review.
Yeah.
Will you get individual feedback for every one of them, and what's sort of the timeline that you expect to
Well,
to
it's a
get
little
that?
bit different because it wasn't our conference officials. We're with the Big 12 Mountain West and usually send all the plays into Greg Burks, who's the head of officials. And so, Saturday morning, I said, what's the format now that it's Pac-12? And they said, we still send it into Greg. So I text back and forth with him, told him we're sending in. And I think he sends it to the Pac. My process is to send it into Greg, and I'm not sure where it goes from there.
And you haven't gotten feedback?
Not yet, no. It's usually the first of the week.
Gotcha.
Because they kind of do all the games before. It's usually either Tuesday or Wednesday we get it back.
Gotcha. And just a final comment on it. I mean, do you plan on changing the technique you teach your
Well,
receivers?
that's one of the questions that you send in and ask and say, what do we tell our receivers in these situations? Because a lot of times it's more of the defensive defender asks these questions. What do and it's always you can be grappling, you got to get your head back. You got to play the ball as a defender. So you don't get to pass. A lot of times coaching on that, and offensively it's usually where it's extension. Our push off is where coach. But we'll see what they say and try to coach up. And it might be a question that I ask the officials every time they come in the locker room, 90 minutes before kickoff. What's your view of pass interference defensively and offensively, to see how they're going to call the game.
Coach, I know you said there was no real moral victories after a loss, but how important was that to you to see your defense show resiliency throughout that game, and do you look forward to seeing that in the future?
And I believe I said it after the game that, the year before, I really didn't know what we had as a football team after that game because it was such, it wasn't good on any front. But I really, the guys asked. They did what we asked as coaches. They were ready to play. They played extremely hard. They played together. The ball didn't bounce our way, and we didn't make enough plays and made too many mistakes to overcome them. But for us to really 2 weeks in a row, kind of start off a little bit shaky, but to find our groove and continue to play together and play hard for each other and be opportunistic on defense was a good sign. I thought our kids fought hard the whole night. I thought they competed to the end. I still think we had a chance there at the end of the ball game if we can get in the end zone on one of those last two drives we had turnovers on. You never know. Y'all watch games all weekend. You never know what can happen. You just got to keep playing.
Mike, just when you look at what your defense, the adjustments you guys have been able to make, at halftime for the second halves of these first two games. You've got to feel pretty good about that. And I just wanted a little bit more about your thoughts about why those adjustments are working so well, what it is in that locker room at halftime that's allowing Coach English and those defensive coaches to make those adjustments.
Well, a lot of times, that's a big word. You hear it all the time. All the announcers love to use adjustments. Everybody likes to, adjustments are going throughout the game. You don't have to wait to halftime to have adjustments. You come out and say, hey, these are the things they thought they were going to do. This is what we're going to do again. We got to do it a little bit better. A lot of times, you very rarely get stuff where totally different than you've seen. You may have to make some adjustments sometimes where this guy cannot handle this guy in a coverage, or we've got to put somebody over the top. But it was more sticking to what our plan was and playing it a little bit better. I thought we came out, a little bit timid in the first quarter, offensively and defensively, and I thought we just adjusted to the game and kind of settled in. Is what I thought happened after really the first quarter. We just kind of settled down and started playing football. And as a emotional 2 weeks for our kids of opening the stadium and then playing on a short week turnaround and just come back and to play the game against an in-state rival. I thought we were just a little bit tight at first, and I thought we relaxed and settled down and played football the rest of the game. But at the end of the day, we didn't make enough plays.
You'd mentioned after the game that part of the struggles in the passing game were just the wrong routes being run. Was it like just a wrong route according to the playbook, or just as you were reading defenses differently?
We were doing a little bit some different stuff formationally than we had done in the past. We did a lot of formation in the boundary, putting Mike to the field, BC and Dietrich to the boundary, different types of things. And I think some of those changes formationally that weren't our routine stuff kind of got us a little bit screwed up on where I was in the formation and what my responsibility was for the route. And we got to sit down and talk to our kids today why we had so many busts in some route. I wouldn't say so many. They were just a handful, and every play was like, the play that could change the game. So, it's the way you coach. Every play you want to be perfect. So we just had too many missed assignments from some veteran guys that normally don't have them. I mean, our quarterbacks kind of look at the wrong side a couple plays where the formation was really flipped around from how we had traditionally run it here in our offense. We didn't execute some situations.
When you look at your offensive line, Ben Knox looked like he warmed up and could have played. Is that a possibility? What's his status for this week?
He was going to be an emergency that game, and we thought he looked good in warm-ups and talked about during the game of possibly putting him out there. He just didn't have a lot of practice time, and they were doing some things off their 3-4 and adding up a backer. It was just, without the practice reps, we just didn't feel comfortable putting him in there. I think he'll be, I would say he's probable. He'll be probable this week. Colby Meeks kind of re-injured his ankle he did from the first week, so he's probably doubtful right now. And then, we got to get Tyler Bjorklund involved. I don't think he's played. I mean, he might have played the first game, the last drive. Get him some more action, and then. But overall, I thought we played well. There were a couple times that Nick got hit, but a lot to do with the passes that we were throwing some deeper shots down the field and having to hold on the ball. It was not just lack of assignment in protection where we blew a protection. Sometimes we had a mismatch with a linebacker on the back with Dawkins, and he kind of ran through our running back and got a hit on Nick, after the ball was and then sometimes Nick got hit because we were running the wrong routes. He's looking for a guy to do something and he's doing the wrong thing. It wasn't necessarily the offensive line.
Mike, when you talk about just being able to focus more on yourselves this week, what are the key things that you think, now that you've got 2 games under your belt, you've seen some things, where do you really zero in and focus on getting your team where you want them to be this week?
Well, I mean, it's back to what you do every week. It's the fundamentals of playing football, and a lot of times it's not it is scheme, all right, but I don't want to overemphasize scheme. I want to still emphasize what we've been doing the first 2 weeks of playing hard, maybe reduce our package a little bit because we are a little limited in the film that we have of their offense and their defense. Let's reduce our package. Let's understand what we're doing against any look that we could get, whether it's an over front, an odd front, an under front, whether they come out in 4 wides or 11 personnel. Basically, reduce our package a little bit, and then if we'll continue to do the things we've been doing of playing with effort, then that's what I want to see this week.
You mentioned that you've had 2 emotional weeks against Power 5 schools this week. I mean, are there challenges to refocusing when you have a team that's just joining the FCS?
Well, I
for the
didn't say
first time?
Power 5. You said
I
that.
said Power
Yeah, I
5.
didn't say that.
You had 2 emotional weeks
I
against
said
other
2
schools,
emotional
yeah.
weeks because it's the opening of the stadium and a big rivalry game. But this is the next game. This is how we train. This is how we year round that we move on and go to the next thing that we've got to do. And the next thing that we've got to do is get ready for Abilene Christian. And we all sit here. We want to be 2-1. That's our goal. And we've got to work for that this week. And that's what I'm going to talk about is that, you're never going to, you're never going to forget it. It's going to be with us the rest of our life that we lost that game. And, in the day we lost. All right. So we're not going to forget it. We got to move on though. All right. And, kind of put it back here in the back somewhere and, it'll bother us the rest of our lives, but we can't let it affect us this week, and that's what I'll talk about. That we got to get ready for this game. We can't let what happened Friday night, or hey, we're playing the number 1 team in the nation in 2 weeks, affect anything. Our preparation needs to be on Abilene Christian, and that's what I expect, and I think that's what our players are going to know what I expect, and we're going to come out and have a great practice today.
Coach, having 3 games without having to travel to a true road test, is that something that kind of allows you to settle into a nice little rhythm early, or is that an advantage or disadvantage?
Normally it would, but this year's been a little bit different with the new stadium. There's been, parking, and it's not your normal routine that these kids have been used to, since they've been here for home games or going to Denver and playing the Rocky Mountain Showdown. Something's been different every week of parking. Something's different today. We got how many people we got out here? It's awesome that, all these people are in our stadium in the Fortitude race. And but it's a little bit different today what we do on Labor Day, because we hadn't really settled into anything because we've moved into a new house and there's things going on each week that are a little bit different. But our guys have done a good job of focusing on what they have to do on a day and know that the schedule might change because, we do have this facility that's going to host a lot of events.
Mike, you mentioned it being Ag Day on Saturday. Curious, have you had a chance to try Old Aggie, just the unique partnership?
I've seen they've given us some of that. My relatives and people that were at the house, hanging out that come to the games and get to cook out, but I got to go recruit. So I've seen some of it at the house. There's a lot out there. I figured Paul would have some in here for y'all today. It looks like our players, I just don't want our players trying Old Aggie today. People are just walking around our building drinking it right now.
What were your impressions when you watched the film of Abilene Christian, their passing game, and their quarterback, Sealy?
Very impressed. They know what they're doing offensively. They know how to spread you out. The guy understands where to go with the ball very, very quickly, and that's usually a true characteristic of a spread team. They recognize coverage and get the ball out quick. So it'll be a guy probably more true spread than what we just played. CU still wanted to run the ball and try to establish the run with their back. This team is, they try to put it on the perimeter and get the ball out quick. Probably won't be a lot of opportunities for sacks, So again, we got to get our hands up. We got to cover down, but do a nice job spreading the ball around.
Coach, I know you talked about Rashad Body and being pleased with his work so far through this year, and he was pretty effective in some limited work last week. Is he a player you like to get more involved?
He is, and he's still got to keep developing into an all-around player. When I say all-around player, they can handle all of our offense. But, to be honest and to be critical of myself, I got to do a better job of doing things that he can do to get him a chance to touch the ball more. sometimes you're scared to have a young back in there because of protection issues, or might not understand everything that you're doing offensively, but he understands how to run the ball. So, we got to make sure that he's out there, and when he's out there, I know he's out there, and we can do, we don't have to have the whole playbook at my disposal. I can do some things that Richard and Coach Applewhite feel comfortable that he can handle assignment-wise.
You obviously saw Kevin Nutt make two really big defensive plays for you. How did he grade out overall in that game?
He graded out the highest defensively, and was the defensive player of the game, not really MVP. Him and Josh Watson played really well defensively, but he was the defensive player of the game for us.
Have you seen his biggest strides made in just his improved technique, or is it attitude?
I think
or is it
the
mix?
biggest stride for me, for Kevin Nutt, has been a little bit of both. His technique, and trusting his technique, but really his mental approach to playing the game. Corner, you got to have a short memory, kind of like, you're asking, you guys kept playing and things weren't going right. Kevin's a guy that's kind of adopted that attitude. He's mentally, he's in a good place and just keeps playing. All righty. You got another one?
I just have one quick one.
All right. Yeah, get your mic.
Watching games this weekend, obviously you and your staff got a chance to probably watch a little more college football than you normally get to. Just did you have any general impressions, and did you watch that Alabama-Florida State game?
Yeah, it was pretty scary. Both defenses were, it was really, really impressive of how they flew around the ball. And, it was a physical, violent football game. I text our staff and said we need to take a knee when they kick off. We don't need to run it out. It's two good teams playing. Going after it is a good football game. A lot of good football. Seeing guys compete.